Hey, what's up, y'all? Back with another video, social commentary, and this is about black economics, about the thing that we've been going through and stuff like that. And we're going to reframe some ideas, about black economics, you know what I'm saying? So, and get to a more of a realistic type concrete goal about our economics in our community. And in doing this reframing the idea, as we said, we're reframing, and doing this reframing, we're going to talk about reframing to looking at the black community as an eternal colony. And I'm gonna give 6 points to this. Point number one, substantial black deprivation, segregation, and exploitation that do exist objectively. Number two, these forms of demonstration, excuse me, are systematic and endemic to the form of eternal colonialism that has developed in this country. They are continued because important segments of the white society profit from such arrangement. Number three. Number four, the influence follows economic powers, and those vested interests will use their power to resist progressive reform. Number five, a great number of structural reforms are needed. Such reforms are nearly impossible to bring about. Number six, success in the changes of the living conditions in the ghetto necessitate the rupture of the colonial relationship which now exists between the black community and society at large. So we gonna check off on these points, and this is the stuff that makes the eternal colony of, like you said, the larger society at large, which is thing. But we gotta understand that the government, which runs the larger society, benefits from this. You know what I'm saying? And we're gonna knock off all these points. I'm at a thesis paper by by adjunct philosopher and lecturer at Marinette College, Ryan Berry, and I'm using this thesis paper. You know what I'm saying? First of all, the federal government supported the creation and expansion of the economically depressed urban residential areas where black lives in segregation from the whites. These areas face barriers to economic development, including high unemployment, a low-wage labor market, and capital drain and market dualism. The ghetto is a recently historical phenomenon. In 1870, now listen to this, in 1870, 80% of black Americans lived as sharecroppers in the rural South. But by 1970, 100 years later, 80% of black Americans lived in urbanized areas outside of the South. So what happened was the federal government forces, or we just changed rural plantation for urban plantation. That's all we did basically in 100 years. That's it. You know what I'm saying? And that was forced upon us. You understand? We're going to read more on that to find out. By 1910 to 1970, 6 million blacks moved to South from the Northeast, Midwest, and West, causing this great migration, including expansion of the northern industrialization in response to the outbreak of World War I, increased labor demand in northern factories, and blacks seeking refuge from exploited southern sharecroppers, among others. Working class northern whites feared economic competition from black migrants. Sound familiar today? Northern factories employed migrant blacks as strike breakers, which earned blacks the empathy of white workers. Most unions excluded blacks. Newspapers increasingly using terms nigger and darky. 5 urban work riots broke out between 1900 and 1920. Whites used violence and intimidation to force blacks out of white areas into darky towns and black belts. Levels of urban segregation between blacks and whites began a steady rise at the turn of the century that would last for over 60 years. Well, it lasts for over 60 years, okay. Between 1930 and 1960, the federal government supported suburban growth by providing greater tax savings for businesses relocating to suburbs than those staying in the city. A government mortgager called Federal Housing Authority, FHA, facilitated new home ownership by accepting small down payments. While policies like these enable 35 million families to participate in homeowner equity accumulation, they, FHA, the feds, the government, constrain black Americans' residential opportunities to the city and deny them wealth generation suburban tract homes. To preserve the stability, FHA recommended the use of restricted covenants, construction agreements among property owners, binding themselves and their heirs. Let me read this again. To preserve neighborhood stability, FHA openly recommended the use of restrictive covenants, contractual agreements among property owners, binding themselves and their heirs to exclude blacks from owning, occupying, and releasing their property. Neighborhood improvement associations, and we know about those, you know what I'm saying? That was with George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin, you know. He was one of them neighborhood watch, neighborhood improvement associations. Kept blacks out of the suburb by threatening boycotts of real estate agents who served suburban homes to blacks. By the late 1960s, white flight was complete. And virtually all American cities with a significant black population had come to house large, extremely segregated, impoverished ghettos. Despite the Fair Housing Act and various economic development programs, the ghetto still exists today. Now let's go back to the checklist. You know, that was Ryan Berry in his thesis statement, you know what I'm saying, Black Capitalism and Economic Program for the Black American Ghetto. I don't know who Ryan Berry is. It just caught up on this. It was just pretty nice. So, philosophy canon at Boston University, you know, hopefully make that stuff happen. But let's go back to this. From what he stated, number one check though. Let's see. Substantial black deprivation, segregation, and exploitation do exist objectively. Okay, you can probably check that off. I say so. These forms of discrimination are systematic and endemic to form eternal colonialism that has developed in this country. I think we can check off number 2 safely. Number 3, they continue because important segments of white society profit from such arrangement. I think we could check that off too. Number 4, the influence follow economic power, and those with vested interests use their power to resist progressive reform. I'm pretty sure they're not giving up their money. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't. If I was in that position, I would not give them my money either. A great number of structural reforms are needed, and such reforms are nearly impossible to bring. Like he said in here, you know what I'm saying, when we read it, you know, why would he, you know, the ghetto persists to this day. It's still segregated, it still persists to this day. So why would you want to, they're not going to change that. I mean, they're not going to, that's not going to be changed by them. Success in changing living conditions in the ghetto, this is number 6, necessitate a rupture from the colonial relationship which now exists between the ghetto and the society at large. That's the only way you're going to change. You got to rebuke that. You got to separate. You got to, you know what I'm saying? You got to separate. You got to do your own thing. So that's the point. That's just using Ryan Berry's work. But let's go to the man who kind of expounds on the theory, and from where I found it at, you know, William, what's the dude's name again? William K. Tabb. You know what I'm saying? Because he talks about, you know, all this economic development that's supposed to be happening in the black community, but it really don't happen because, number one, as he talked about earlier, but the creation of the ghettos, the federal government is not going to allow that. You know what I'm saying? The government best interest, what people don't understand, what black people don't understand is blacks in the economics, or, you know what I'm saying, the economic, capitalist economics of America is organic. They grew up together. You know what I'm saying? Hand in hand. But the reason why it grew up together because blacks was put in a fucked up position under slavery and things of that nature. And so our cheap labor has always been enforcement of this, of white economic capitalism here in the United States to the greater or the larger society as a whole. So the courts are not gonna change that. As long as they keep on making money, they good. Now, what's gonna happen? This is another book we should get into, but I'm not gonna get into today. It's a book called Who Needs the Negro? Pretty soon, black labor ain't gonna be needed no more. Y'all seeing that now. You know what I'm saying? And cats gonna be fighting over pennies and crumbs. So what we need to do more is collectivize. But doing this collectivization, we got to see each other as this, in my mind, as an eternal. You know what I'm saying? We're under colonialism, which is an eternal colony within the United States, a nation within a nation. You know what I'm saying? All right, the politics of black capitalism. The spring of 1968, Richard Nixon delivered a two-part nation address, the bridges to human dignity, in which he suggests that the only proper incentive we can expect from large corporations to commit sources to the problem of the cities and offer a view of private enterprise is far less than government, can offer opportunities which produce progress, not promises. In the solving of America, we can get a bigger social return on investment. The second thing was direct participation by blacks in ownership roles, as he put it. To have human rights, people need property rights. There is nothing more subtle in Nixon's speech recasting the demands of collective emancipation to the version of black pride through representation. What most militants are asking, he declared, is to be included as owners, as entrepreneurs, to have a share of the wealth and a piece of the action. Just before his inauguration, President-elect Nixon told black leaders in an obligatory meeting that he pledges to do more for the underprivileged and more for the Negro than any other president has done. Well, to drive a wedge in the black community and isolate groups and individuals, and then begin building a mass base among the black ghetto dwellers, the Nixon administration enforced black capitalism. By extending a promise of money for black businesses, Nixon administration undercut the vision of neighborhood community development corporations, which would serve the people by offering jobs and goods and services along cooperative lines. Nixon proposed instead giving a few black businesses people a piece of the action. Thus, Nixon would isolate those who saw capitalism as a problem from those who would support capitalism, social relations as the only legitimate means of helping blacks. So basically, you know what I'm saying, our money gonna help you get right. Because it's my money. Like Neely Ferguson was saying that in one of his new speeches out there. It's online. Go get that. You know what I'm saying? Go listen to that. It's my money. I created it. This only thing that's going to help you. Something that I got to give you. The black group that gained the most from Nixon program was the black business class. E. Franklin E. Frazier Negro's bourgeoisie that would have a monopoly on the Negro market. As Franklin noted, while this group might gain a privileged status within the isolated Negro community, it would a separate Negro economy really be best for most blacks in the long haul? Would a separate economy be beneficial for most blacks in the long haul? That's crazy. So, you know what I'm saying? Would it be beneficial? Shortly after he took office, Nixon created the Office of Minority Business Enterprise within the Department of Commerce to foster black pride. Let me read this again. Shortly after he took office, Nixon created the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, or the OMBE, within the Department of Commerce to foster black pride, to involve more of our private enterprise system, and to open the route to individual minority group members to succeed as individuals in the great American tradition. Thus, by repressing the militants who raised up the specter of collection action, while rewarding those blacks who will anticipate in this individualistic orientation, the Nixon administration sought to diffuse the mass movement, buying off the most attractable leadership, isolating extremists, and leaving the black masses directionless without leadership or support in the white community. So this office was set up as a plan to knock off the Black Power movement that was moving on. Let's keep going. Because the government, like I said before, you know, Farrakhan got a speech out there saying the U.S. government the worst enemy. These are facts, is backing it up. The OMBE, created in March 1969 by executive order, was a vehicle to fill Nixon's black capitalism problems. The new agent was not given funds. It was functional as merely to coordinate with other agency activities and promote minority enterprise and private sector involvement. The money to establish the OMBE was not even new federal funding. It was taken out of the Office of Economic Opportunity, the OEO budget. Now, the OEO today, or the Office of Economic Opportunity today, is called the Community Action Agency. The idea was to address general poverty. I'm reading from the Michigan side of the Action Agency, and the Community Action Agency, helping members change lives, helping member agency change lives. And I'm reading from that, and it goes through the history, and it talks about the Community Action Agency. Another program we gotta know about that's not really talked about in the black community, and many people probably don't even know what it does. The Community Action Agency was first modeled after programs addressing urban renewal and youth unemployment. It was linked to local officials, service agencies, and neighborhoods. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy launched a new frontier in New York City with Mobilization for the Youth, MFY, backed by the city and the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation. MFY, organized neighborhood councils of local officials and service providers and neighbors to battle juvenile delinquency. Another Ford Foundation project in New Haven, Connecticut, required various community sectors to help low-income people. The idea was expanded on to address general poverty. After Kennedy's assassination, President Johnson carried on the anti-poverty vision with the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, or the EOA. The legislation created the Federal Office of Economic Opportunity, the OEO, led by Sergeant Shriver, and placed under the president's direct control. Shriver is related to Kennedy. We should know that by now. That's a family that married the Kennedy family, and all them, they together. The Community Action Agency was created to fight poverty at a local level. The OEO and the Community Action Agent Network will launch some iconic names in U.S. Human Services: the Neighborhood Youth Corps, Head Start, and VISTA, Program Volunteers in Service to America, and Job Corps. So that's what that's what is known now. Every community has one of those, a community action agency. You know what I'm saying? So go down, see your local one, and see what's going on. But let's get back into this. These bugs is around. Let's get back into this. And about the minority businesses. So we got the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, right? Set up by Nixon out of what we just discussed before. The OEA. These bugs is killing me, but this is all good. I love being out here in nature. Hundreds of the OMBE funded minority business program development organizations established to give advance and highly widely criticized. The delinquency rate on the SBA, or Small Business Enterprise Minority Loans, ran 50% over a 3-year period, and perhaps $5 billion spent to assist minority concerns show little results. The corruption, the peonage, and the political patronage and kickbacks have rampant in the program. By 1975, SBA total loan budget was down $40 million, and Gerald Ford denied higher requests for appropriation as part of the fight against inflation. Jimmy Carter, the Democratic president, showed little interest in that, in minority businesses. So Carter, he really just didn't care. You know what I'm saying? By late 1973, criminal investigations underway on alleged robbery and extortion and fraud in the Nixon's administration Black Capitalist program. At first, it appeared there was a substantial amount of bribes and kickback integratedly connected with the OMB, Office of Minority Business Enterprise, coming at a time when the high officials of the housing development of the Department of Housing and Urban Development were charged with violation of the law of appropriating political favors to career service, civil service positions. It soon became clear that minority business people were in fact not only being helped to a fuller participation in our free economic system, but were becoming part of the very process of our free government as well. They were involved in a minor way, as benefited their status in the complex events and acts which came to subsume under the heading Watergate. Mm. At first look, it just looked like minority business people were shaking down for expenditures, who saw proposals through acceptance for a fee. But the pattern soon emerged that the Committee to Re-elect the President, or CREP, was most probably someone quite high up in the White House itself had ties in the Small Business Administration to burn the files on Dr. Thomas W. Matthews, one of Nixon's most outspoken black supporters and an advocate for black capitalism, who had been convicted on 71 counts of illegal use of Medicaid funds, and had therefore been pardoned by Nixon while serving a tax evasion sentence. The president also Nixon personally told SBA to provide all assistance possible to Matthews. Matthews told the federal investigators looking into his selling in unregistered bonds, that he would turn over no documents. He in fact told the Security Exchange Commission investigator, "You get those records only after you have contacted the White House staff." According to Queens, New York District Attorney Office Frauds Bureau, Matthews could be prosecuted for a lease of $800,000 in disclosed income, of $800,000 in undisclosed income, and probably more, but he was being protected by the White House. Matthews was only the tip of the iceberg. Soon, the Watergate investigation showed strategy in which the government departments were turned into collection agency with CREPs. Minority business people were told that their federal assistance would depend on their donation. Their federal assistance would depend on their donations to the president's campaign effort. Here was the real equity at work. Just as American Airlines and Shell Petroleum was told to kick in, so were humble black and Chicano small business people, a true example of American democratic government. So even when they give you the money, if you didn't get in favor with them or you didn't do what they said do, the government would say they's cutting that funding. So they basically became slaves again. You know what I'm saying? But on a different auction block. You know what I'm saying? But as you said earlier, it was very early in this paper by William K. Tabb, the whole plan was designed to destroy the black economics, destroy it even more so it won't come up on a collective purpose. So we're going to break down and law these individuals up. So we got to look at things like that, In a 1972 census showed that 200,000 black-owned businesses, less than 2% of the total, and 94 were single proprietorship, and less than 20% had any paid employees. More than 100 years after emancipation, black businesses is a barbershop or a dry cleaner, not a steel mill or even an apartment store. Motown Industries, let me read that again. For more than 100 years after emancipation, black businesses is a barbershop or a dry cleaner, not a steel mill or a department store. Motown Industries and few other black firms among them banks and insurance companies go unnoticed in the world of big business. In 1974, black business failure rate was 18% compared to less than 1% of small business generally. 13 of the nation's 100 largest black businesses went bankrupt between 1972 and 1975. So it's not looking good, So it's not looking good. So the plan is basically working and breaking things up, about what happened to the black economy, how this stuff went down. Stuff that nobody talks about and that we're not taught on, but we're going to keep going because let's see what else happens. Community development continues to be a goal of commanding mass support, but it's understood that CDCs cannot operate successfully under profit-making criteria. Community participation cannot stimulate by individual calculations for a potential return on equity, since investors have little equity to risk, even if profits were to be made. Today, in short, community development corporations, community corporations seems utopian and inadequate as a strategy to support black businesses. The statistics hardly support the confidence in the black entrepreneurship as a significant channel for black advancement. Blacks over the last 100 years had hardly built such a base of capital on ownership. So because of the last 100 years, we only have barbershops and dry cleaners, which disappearing too. Those are disappearing too. We never, over the last 100 years, that 100 years, we hardly built up a base of capital ownership. President Carter followed Nixon's example, cut social spending, that will help mass of disadvantaged blacks while promising to expand 50% of fiscal 1980 loans to minority-owned businesses by SBA. He does this knowing that an ongoing 3-year investigation by a 10-agency investigation team had by the late 1978 found at least $3.5 million in advances to a mere 35 firms in New York City missing, and that $50 million in federal funds for minority business worldwide was in jeopardy. With the details of alleged abuse are fascinating. One identified contractor had allegedly spent $200,000 of government funds to buy a thoroughbred horse which died of cold. So people here, like I said, when you use the term minority, everybody jump in on it. So we got to look at things like how they try to another setup for us, which brings us back to like I said before. They're not gonna change the system because they benefit from the system. They benefit from all these things that happens. They getting their money. Our organic relationship with capitalism in the Western Hemisphere is our chain to keep us in one position. In order for us to break out that economic position, we have to totally flip and reframe thoughts of economics and get back into group collective activity, which I'm showing right here they was trying to break. The CDC was an ideological threat in the matter of what alternatives were. During the Johnson era, President Johnson, of riot and urban rebellion, ascent into militancy, there were small payments of channel for black political power. In the early Nixon years, when pressure was off, they were discarded by Washington. At no point did it ever make an economic sense. The ghetto is not a place of an honest businessman or community development corporation can be conveniently profitable. As a vehicle to meet social needs, CDC makes a lot of sense, but they undermine the traditional power relations and require revolutionary change in the larger society or the powerful political base in the community, which spreads support in broader arenas. A great deal is naivete in the early discussion of the CDC in the optimistic hopes that their profits could be used to fund a daycare center, legal aid, and other community services. Large chain stores are moving out of the ghetto areas. Small mom and pop stores will not turn in much profit. How were the CDC businessmen to reverse the realities of doing business in these neighborhoods? With the fusing of the Black Power movement by splintering old liberal labor alliances, these vehicles appear fragile vehicles indeed. The community development model has the same problem indicated as an individual's entrepreneurial model. It is that successful blacks who show leadership and ability skills are offered more greater remuneration and opportunity for advancement by government agencies and private corporations. For this reason, political commitments, eternal education, and consciousness raised had to be central to such efforts. To tone down the politics to be acceptable to funding agencies and local politicians to fit in their system is to undercut those elements that sustain broad participation and a sense of commitment on the part of those who have broader opportunities. The difficulties faced led to a loss of idealism and promote a realistic attitude. I have served my time now and I want to share a good life, and communal groups cannot be sustained in the face of such destructive defection. So they saying that we can't get it together because we come together collective. They always gonna have some type of promotion system where one's gonna get promoted up and they gonna treat that one like Claude Anderson said, a marry manumission, marry your notorious manumission. They gonna treat one, the system still exists today, as we talking about, they gonna treat one so good that, okay, they gonna put the focus on him and all the attention on him and or her and say that, look at this, you can be this, you can do this, you can do, this is what you can be if you follow the system that we got laid down for you. Concessions to the blacks were structured to bring their demands in ideological conformity with the rules of the status quo and the market relations. Those blacks as accepting such approach were given advisory or staff positions. Their programs seemed to meet the demands of the movement, but actually undercut its unity, strength, and the most conservative strands of the movement and deny legitimacy to the militants. and gave the former a stake in the system and prepared him for arbitration action and police violence against extremists. So if you didn't come down with the program was used to cut the unity and strengthen the conservative strands of the movement and deny legitimacy to militants. All part of COINTELPRO, we heard this before, and gave a stake, gave the former, you know what I'm saying, the guy who got the staff position, a stake in the system and prepared them to accept arbitrary action and police violence against extremists. So once they had a stake in the system, they didn't felt like, well, you know, I'm not black, I'm OJ, go get them. And this is what happened to black capitalism. Still going on today. Still happening like it is right now. You know, so hopefully you subscribe to the channel. That was William K. Tabb, what happened to black economics in the black community. You know what I'm saying? The programs are used to undercut the unity. You know, when a white man giving you something, or when your enemy is giving you something, out of the gesture of kindness, it still be that he's trying to attack you. He or she is trying to attack you. So just because they give you some money, which they created, by the way, that's their little thing they created. We mess with gold. You know what I'm saying? We ain't mess with the money like no paper money like that. We did every once in a while. But we mostly gold and that resource. That's our shit. But once they gave you paper money, people sold out. And then once people got them jobs up there and them special positions, or, you know, either what it was a black business, capitalism through the government, or through a black community program, both was used to cut the collective unity of our people. And that's how they get down. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to read this, and that's how it get down and stuff like that. So I'm going to read this one more time. You know, the concessions to black were structured into their demands into ideological conformity with the rules of the status quo and of market relations. Those blacks most accepting of such programs were given advisory or staff position. The program seems to meet the demands of the movement, but actually undercut its unity, strength, and its most conservative strands of the movement, and denied legitimacy to militants. Gave the former, the advisory staff guy who got down, a stake in the system and prepared him to accept arbitrary action and police violence against extremists. And all this fits the original status quo point of the eternal colony, the black community as being an eternal colony. Number one, subject black deprivation, segregation, and exploitation do exist objectively. Even the man who joined the system is being exploited because he's being exploited to keep the unity down amongst his people. So even the man that joined that stuff is still being exploited. Number two, or the female. Number two, the forms of discrimination are systematic and endemic to the form of eternal colonialism that has developed in this country. Well, you can see that. Number three, they continue because an important segments of the white society profit from such arrangements. So if they got you as a supervisor or whatever, or you the black minority businessman getting your money from the government, you still profit in white society. Number four, the political influence follow economic power, and those with vested interests use their power to resist progressive reform. They was punking these marks to give money up to Nixon. Here you go. Your economic assistance from the feds that you get your money from is going to depend on you kicking back. Same thing on the other side too with the community development corporations. We got to keep these programs running. So, you got to vote. Blame, 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 blame. All right, number five, a great number of structural reform is needed. Such reform are nearly impossible to bring about. They don't want to change the system. We got to realize it. And number six, the success and changing the living conditions in the ghetto or in the black community necessitate the rupture of the colonial relationship which now exists between the black community and the society at large. Focus on number six. Much love. Glad y'all stayed with me. This is my longest commentary thus far. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully y'all, subscribe to the channel. Show some love. We just reading stuff about stuff that we need to talk about. Hey, have a wonderful day. Stay blessed and stay in the present moment. Peace.